So these are buttons. They're just a couple of that I pulled out of my stash so I could show you some differences about different materials that buttons are made out of, the different shapes and forms that they are. There's all sorts of different types. So let's talk about the most common, most typical, most common button is just a shirt button, something similar to that. This one only has 2 holes. We're going to do a 2-hole button, but it's the simplest and easiest to do. There are a lot of them. It's made out of plastic. There are a lot of them that are very similar to this, maybe a little bit bigger, that are a 4-hole button. That's what this button is. This is a 4-hole. So is this little flower-shaped one. This one down here. So the differences I wanted to show you between these 3 are what they're made out of as well as their size, so, and color, obviously. So this one's a plastic button, and this one is metal. You can kind of hear it sounds like a coin. And this one's wood. So there's all sorts of different materials that they can be made out of. This is a 2-hole button, but it's ceramic. So is this little heart. You have to be super careful. This stuff, you have to hand wash the garment because they'll break in the washer. And then this one, you ever make Shrinky Dinks when you were younger? That's what this is. This was made out of a Shrinky Dink that my kids colored a long time ago. We put little holes in it to put it, I'm not sure. I think this was going to go on a book bag just for decoration. And I think they had a lot of extras. So kind of fun to do. But so we've done, let's see here. We've talked about a little bit about 2-hole, simple. There's just 2 holes in it. Then the 4-hole, simple as that. Then we have something as this one, which has this little plastic part underneath there. This one does 2. Whoa, my hands. You can see that little extra part right there. That's called the shank. And when we sew these flat buttons onto something, we have to make a thread shank underneath there to replace that. This one's made out of fabric. This is an oldie. This is a really old button, but it has its own little thread shank underneath there. And you have to stitch right through that fabric. That's an antique. That's an oldie. It's about as old as I am. But it's kind of cool. So when we sew, we have to make sure that the button doesn't stay flat on our garment that we stitch it to. It has to be lifted up. So the shank on this button that comes with it, right there, that little plastic part, it does that job for us. And the reason being is we have to make space for it. So here's another button. This is a typical one like on jeans. This is a jacket. This is a stud that's been hammered together to make this stick together. So it's not been stitched on. It's got this like a tack is what it is, sticking straight up through the garment. And then you put the button on top of it and they hammer it, and that spreads right inside there to hold that in place. But it's got the space already invented. See how it lifts that button up? So that's what we have to do in order to button. So we have to take into consideration how thick the garment is so that it lays over that button and doesn't pucker. So that's why we have a shank that we add. All right. Sorry, that's kind of blurry. I'm not very good at doing this one-handed. So I'm going to stitch these in a couple minutes. I'm going to have my husband come up and videotape. So forgive us. We're not professionals at this, but I'm doing the best I can so you can learn how to do it. So before you do anything, after you've watched this, click on the next video, which is all about how to tie your knot in the end of your double thread. When we sew on buttons, there's a lot, you've probably lost a button off of something. That's because it wasn't sewn on right by the manufacturer, not as well as you do. So we're going to sew this on correctly and it won't ever come off. Of course, these are samples, so it's not like it's going to have wear and tear on it. But that way you'll know how to do that. You want to watch that video. You want to make sure that you get your piece of thread through your needle. Remember, it's twice the width of your shoulders, and tie the knot with a quilter's knot in the end of it, and be ready with your piece of fabric. I want you to take that. You have a 4x8, if I'm not mistaken, that you have. You probably have 2 of them. We have a backup just in case, but I want you to fold that in half and be ready to stitch. We're going to stitch all 3 buttons on this piece. All right, well, let's do that.